The Senate hearing room was packed. Journalists lined the walls, cameras streamed every second, and the tension was sharp enough to cut glass. It was one of those rare moments where political spectacle crossed into primetime drama. At the center of it all, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Chief Justice Nathaniel Harrow, a conservative icon with a reputation for intellectual elitism. He leaned into the microphone with a smile that barely masked his condescension. "Congresswoman Crockett," Harrow said, adjusting his robe like it was armor, "before you question constitutional interpretation, perhaps you should first understand it. I hear your law school isn't exactly Ivy League material." A few senators chuckled. Crockett didn't blink. Her eyes locked on him like a laser sight. She leaned forward slowly, her tone smooth but sharp. "With all due respect, Chief Justice, I may not have gone to Harvard. But I also didn't have to buy my way into law school, unlike someone I'm staring at." The room froze. One of the aides dropped a pen. Harrow's grin flickered. "Excuse me?" he asked, clearly rattled. Crockett calmly opened a manila folder in front of her. "Since we're bringing up academic credentials on live television, let's get real. You attended Mather College of Law, correct?" "Yes, one of the top in its day." "Funny," she said, sliding a printed document toward the clerk, "because according to a 1991 review board, your bar passage rate ranked in the bottom 10 nationwide, and your graduating class was investigated for a cheating scandal you never disclosed." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Justice Harrow's face drained of color. "That investigation was sealed," he snapped. Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Not anymore. Congressional privilege grants me access to documents related to judicial integrity. And let me be clear, I didn't come here today to be lectured about law by someone whose classmates literally bribed proctors." The camera panned to several stunned senators, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "This isn't a personal attack," Crockett continued, "this is a defense of transparency. You questioned my academic background. So let's look at yours." She lifted a second sheet. "Here's a letter from the Bar Association's Ethics Committee, dated 1992. It expresses grave concern about inconsistencies in your academic disclosures, particularly a forged internship recommendation." One of the aides behind Harrow started whispering urgently into his earpiece. He raised a hand. "I will not allow this to become a character assassination." "Oh, now it's character assassination," Crockett said, eyes gleaming. "When you implied my law degree made me unfit to speak, that was just polite debate. But when your own past shows cracks, suddenly it's off limits." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Reporters typed furiously. Senator Ruiz, who had been silent until now, leaned into his mic. "Order. This committee recognizes Congresswoman Crockett's right to respond." She was directly challenged. Crockett wasn't finished. "And by the way, Justice Harrow, since you questioned my education, let's compare outcomes. I passed the bar on my first try. You didn't." Boom. The chamber erupted. Chief Justice Harrow's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The usually unshakable judicial titan looked like a man watching the ground vanish beneath his feet. He glanced toward the committee chair, hoping for rescue. None came. "Congresswoman Crockett," he muttered, trying to regain composure, "this is neither the time nor the place." She cut him off without raising her voice. "You made it the time. You made it the place." Her eyes scanned the room. "Women, especially black women, have had to prove ourselves over and over just to be heard. But I didn't come here to be patronized by a man who weaponizes his robe like a shield. You attacked my background to discredit my voice." She turned another page in her folder. "Let's be clear. You claimed to graduate magna cum laude. But according to your school's registrar," she held up the document. Cameras zoomed in. "Your final GPA placed you outside the top 40% of your class." Gasps again. Audible now. "Either your school has a very generous definition of magna, or someone lied under oath on a federal disclosure form. The moment was explosive. On social media, clips of Crockett's takedown began circulating under trending tags like #AcademicGate and #Crockett vs. Goliath. Justice Harrow looked like a statue melting under a heat lamp. Then, his voice dropped. "This is beneath the dignity of this hearing." But Crockett was already gathering her papers. "So was your condescension." She looked up. "Now, shall we get back to the actual law? Or are we still comparing resumes?" Silence. Even the cameras seemed afraid to blink. For a full 10 seconds, nobody moved. Chief Justice Harrow shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly weighing whether to push back or retreat. But Jasmine Crockett had flipped the courtroom dynamic on its head, and the nation was watching. Senator Ruiz cleared his throat. "Let's proceed," he said, eyes darting between Crockett and Harrow like a referee stuck in the final seconds of a championship match. "Congresswoman Crockett, do you have a question related to the pending judicial ethics review?" Crockett nodded calmly. "Yes, Mr. Chairman. I do." She tapped her pen on the folder, now closed with finality. "Chief Justice Harrow, earlier this year you declined to recuse yourself from a case involving your former campaign donor, citing what you called, no direct conflict. My question is simple. Do you believe that failing to disclose a financial relationship with a litigant upholds the principles of judicial neutrality?" Harrow exhaled, clearly still shaken. "The relationship was minimal," he said, slower now, more cautious. "It did not meet the legal threshold for recusal." Crockett leaned forward. "So you set the threshold, interpreted, and defended, while refusing to recuse yourself from ruling on the very case involving that donor?" He paused. "Congresswoman, the Code of Conduct does not apply to Supreme Court justices in the same binding manner," she cut in again, her tone cutting but professional. "And there it is. You want the power of a judge, the status of a scholar, and the freedom of a politician. But no accountability." You could hear a pin drop. Even those on Harrow's side of the aisle looked uncomfortable. "Sir, with all due respect," Crockett added, "you didn't come here to be questioned, you came here assuming you wouldn't be." Another senator whispered something to a staffer. It was clear, Harrow hadn't expected to face a wall of facts, much less one built by a woman he underestimated live on national television. Outside the chamber, the story was already exploding. News banners blazed with headlines: "Crockett corners Chief Justice on Ethics and Education, Live Hearing Turns into Judicial Showdown, Jasmine Crockett Delivers Mic Drop Moment." Back in the room, Chief Justice Harrow attempted a counterattack. "I agreed to testify here in good faith," he said, his voice tinged with wounded authority. "Not to be publicly humiliated by a political performance." Crockett didn't flinch. "And I showed up in good faith expecting integrity, not to be belittled because I didn't graduate from one of your legacy law clubs." She shifted her tone now, still strong, but more reflective. "Let's not pretend this is just about me. For every young law student watching this, who doesn't come from a pedigree but fights twice as hard, this is for them." She gestured toward the camera. "You tried to reduce me to a resume footnote. But I stand here with receipts, results, and real-life experience. And more importantly, I stand here unafraid." Justice Harrow leaned back. There was no rebuttal left in him, only the echo of a failed tactic that had completely backfired. Senator Ruiz interjected once more, this time with gravity. "The chair thanks Congresswoman Crockett for her questioning. The committee will recess for 5 minutes." The gavel hit the desk. The moment was over, but not forgotten. As Crockett gathered her papers, a reporter near the back whispered to a colleague, "This wasn't a hearing. It was history." The 5-minute recess turned into 15. Outside the chamber, a swarm of journalists gathered in the hallway, angling to catch Crockett for comment. Inside, Chief Justice Harrow remained seated, stone still, his legal pad untouched, his face unreadable. Back in her office, Congresswoman Crockett's team was buzzing. Her communications director leaned in, whispering, "We've got over 3 million views already, and the clip isn't even an hour old." MSNBC just dubbed it the cross-examination of the year. Crockett, still composed, sipped water. "Let's stay focused. This wasn't about a headline. This was about making it clear that credentials don't excuse corruption." Meanwhile, in the hearing room, other committee members were now re-evaluating their own prepared questions. What had started as a routine testimony from the Chief Justice had turned into a turning point, a rare moment of accountability, broadcast live. The gavel sounded again. The committee reconvened. Senator DeWitt, a moderate voice from across the aisle, leaned into her microphone. "Before we move forward," she said carefully, "I want to thank Congresswoman Crockett for her candor and precision. Regardless of politics, this committee was due for a reminder that no one is above scrutiny." The words rang with bipartisan weight. Chief Justice Harrow simply nodded, his earlier arrogance now replaced with something closer to quiet restraint. Crockett didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply flipped to a fresh page in her legal pad. "Now," she said, calmly, "let's talk about your recent ruling on election laws." Her tone hadn't changed. But everyone listening understood, this wasn't about the past anymore. She was here to hold the line for the future. And she wasn't finished. The hearing room was quieter now, but more alert. Everyone, from staffers to senators, leaned forward as Jasmine Crockett turned the page. "Chief Justice," she began, "let's discuss your majority opinion in Benson v. State Board, the case that restricted ballot access across 3 swing states. You argued that the law in question did not present a substantial burden." She paused. "Did you personally speak to any of the voters affected by that ruling?" Harrow shifted in his chair. "That's not the role of the judiciary, Congresswoman." "Right," she said. "But it is your role to understand the real-world impact of your decisions." Crockett tapped a document on her desk. According to an independent review, over 200,000 voters were purged due to administrative errors, mostly low-income, elderly, and disabled individuals. She flipped it around for the committee to see. In one state, an 89-year-old Korean War veteran was denied a ballot because his driver's license had expired. His only other form of ID? His military discharge papers. That didn't meet your new standard. Justice Harrow opened his mouth, then paused. "The court must apply the law as written, but not as lived," Crockett finished for him. That line hit hard. Several lawmakers nodded silently. "We are not just here to interpret the law," she continued. "We are responsible for what happens when that law leaves this room and enters people's lives." Then she added, her voice clear and unwavering, "You once said the Constitution is colorblind and class-blind. But your rulings tell a different story, one where privilege gets access and the rest get instructions." The silence that followed was dense with realization. Even Chief Justice Harrow, known for his verbal fencing, had no parry. Jasmine Crockett had not only defended her own education, she had educated the highest judge in the land. And America had watched it all unfold. By now, the atmosphere in the hearing room had shifted entirely. What started as an attempt to discredit Jasmine Crockett had become a nationally televised reckoning, a moment where the veil of prestige was pulled back, and the justice behind the robe was made to answer for more than just theory. Senator Willis, a veteran of the committee, leaned over and whispered to a colleague, "I've never seen a sitting Chief Justice look so cornered." Meanwhile, Crockett wasn't slowing down. She pulled out her final document. "This memo," she said, holding it up, "is from your chambers, leaked anonymously, raising concern over your dissent in the Fairtech v. Labor Coalition case. It describes unusual external correspondence between your office and an executive at a tech firm that directly benefited from the ruling." The room snapped to attention again. Harrow's jaw clenched. "That memo is unverified, but not denied," Crockett interjected. "You see, the issue here isn't just law. It's trust. You used your platform to shame others while shielding your own decisions from sunlight. She leaned back and paused. You expected me to shrink on this stage. But I didn't come here to play defense. I came here with the facts. And the difference between your resume and mine, Chief Justice, is that mine doesn't need editing. The silence in the room was thunderous. Even Harrow didn't attempt a rebuttal. Senator Ruiz finally spoke. This hearing has reminded us all that titles mean little without integrity. The committee thanks Congresswoman Crockett for her questioning. We will move forward with formal inquiries into the matters raised today. The gavel came down. But Jasmine Crockett had already won, long before it fell. Within hours of the hearing, clips of Jasmine Crockett's exchange flooded every major news outlet. Cable anchors called it the most devastating congressional cross-examination in years. Social media dubbed it simply, the Crockett correction. On Twitter, now X, hashtags like hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag academicgate, and hashtag Harrowrect were trending globally. The Washington Post ran a headline the next morning, Justice Harrow meets his match, Crockett delivers a masterclass in accountability. Even traditionally conservative outlets couldn't ignore the optics. One commentator on a right-leaning channel muttered, "Well, she did her homework." Harrow walked in wearing a crown and left with a footnote. Behind closed doors, the Judiciary Committee quietly launched a bipartisan inquiry into the inconsistencies raised during the hearing. Multiple watchdog groups filed FOIA requests for Harrow's past rulings and recusal history. But more than just a scandal or a viral clip, something bigger was shifting. At local universities, law students began citing Crockett's performance in debates. Young professionals, especially women of color, flooded her office inbox with messages of admiration and support. "You didn't just defend yourself," one message read, "you defended us all." In a brief interview the next day, Crockett was asked how she stayed so composed. She smiled gently and said, "Because I knew the truth. And I knew he wasn't ready for it." And that was the legacy of the moment, not just the facts she exposed, but the message she sent. No title, no robe, and no seat on the bench could shield someone from the truth, when it's delivered by someone brave enough to stand up and speak it. Weeks later, the ripple effects still hadn't settled. Chief Justice Nathaniel Harrow canceled 2 public appearances and issued a carefully worded statement insisting his record was beyond reproach, yet he did not deny the documents presented during the hearing. Whispers of a possible internal judicial review swirled inside the Capitol. Congressional staff confirmed that at least 2 House members were drafting legislation requiring stricter academic and financial disclosure rules for federal judges. But while Washington turned inward to protect its institutions, outside the Beltway, the country was looking at someone else. Jasmine Crockett. She'd gone from rising progressive voice to national symbol of fearless accountability. Late-night shows replayed her lines like they were legendary comebacks. Editorials praised her for restoring dignity to the oversight process. Schools invited her to speak to law students. Even critics admitted, grudgingly, that her command of facts and composure were impossible to ignore. But Crockett, true to form, didn't seek the spotlight. In an interview with NPR, she kept it simple: "What I did in that room wasn't personal. It was necessary. When someone in power tries to humiliate you, you don't shrink. You speak truth with receipts." And then she added, quietly, "If we want better leaders, we have to stop treating titles like shields and start asking harder questions." That line became the quote engraved on a plaque later hung in a Texas law school hallway, right under her portrait. As for Harrow, his rulings continued, but his name was never mentioned again without a shadow of that hearing. His legacy, once pristine, would forever carry an asterisk. And Jasmine Crockett? She didn't just survive the fire. She lit it, walked through it, and rewrote the rules for everyone watching.